Hashtag psychotherapy unfogged with Mark Fielding.
Hello, welcome to Series 6, Episode 8 of Hashtag Psychotherapy Unfogged. From the UK, for international listeners, it's hotter than Venus today. So excuse the fan in the background. Hopefully our listeners won't be able to hear that, but yeah, I have to have it on, otherwise I'm going to melt. Today I have the absolute pleasure to interview Esther Barrett, ADHD and neurodiversity coach, supervisor and trainer. Esther is the managing director of Barrett Coaching and Training Limited. She's a qualified coach specializing in ADHD and neurodiversity in the workplace and in life. I've just completed Esther's ADHD coaching program, and I have to say it's absolutely brilliant. More on that later. And Esther has also recently arranged the first ADHD coaches conference in the UK in Cardiff, which I also had the absolute pleasure to go to. That was also great. Next one's in Manchester next year, Esther. Do I remember that
Yes,
right? Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so Esther, tell us a little bit around what brought you into this area.
it's so interesting because
Mm,
I've been in education for 25 years and I was a consultant learning technologist for a really long time. I worked for a fantastic organization in the UK called JISC, and we were supporting universities and colleges and work-based learning providers. And I was really into the teaching and learning stuff and the accessibility of using technology for teaching and learning.
mm,
And then the pandemic happened. So two things happened in the pandemic. One of them was that suddenly everyone in education was interested in what we were doing. So that was being able to provide technology to support teaching and learning. So everyone started teaching and learning online,
yeah.
and we were being asked for advice and guidance a lot, like even more than usual, around how to create really good learning experiences for people. Um, and then secondly, my son had been diagnosed with ADHD about 10 years before that.
Mm,
And during the pandemic, I was on screen so much, literally seeing myself on screen so much, and maybe the boredom and maybe all the other things that were happening in the pandemic, I kind
yeah.
of realized that I had ADHD because I
Yeah.
noticed it visibly.
Yeah.
I
So,
noticed
so some diagnosed first, and then when you say you noticed it visibly, what did you see?
the movement,
Mm,
other people would be sitting on a Zoom call or a Teams call, and people would be just, like doing the usual
mm,
things. And I'd be drinking gallons of water. I'd be putting on my lip salve every like couple of minutes. You could see me visibly moving. I visibly
mm,
move when I'm speaking as well. I move my
mm,
hands and things a lot.
yeah.
And Lewis had been telling me for a really long time that I had ADHD, like
Mm,
the previous 10 years probably. But it wasn't until I had that space that we had in the pandemic. I'm not saying the
mm,
pandemic was a good thing, but we had
mm,
a lot
yeah.
of space and time,
Mm,
almost in a way, to focus on ourselves in a way that we hadn't
mm,
done for a really long time because, we
mm,
were all going out for walks, weren't we? And we were all
yeah.
taking exercise and trying to get out of the house and just having all that time and space to ourselves just made me notice the physicality of my ADHD.
Mm. Yeah, I mean the whole COVID thing. Yeah, I mean obviously terrible, terrible experience, but I mean in some respects it did change the landscape. I mean it's really interesting to hear you talk about it changing the landscape of teaching because I
Mhm.
guess it did. Everything I guess had to go online, and similarly for kind of counselling and psychotherapy. I mean I used to personally work face to face mostly, and then all of a sudden everything went online. And the landscape has changed. I guess from that event, society has changed, to some extent, however negative, it was. Yeah. Could I just ask you, just for our listeners who don't know really anything about ADHD, I mean, what is ADHD, Esther?
Good question. And
Mm,
there is a lot of information out there which can be very overwhelming, actually.
mm,
And there are these six kind of really technical, kind of almost medical descriptions of ADHD, which are the inattentiveness, the impulsivity, the hyperactivity. And then in addition to that, we think about the emotional dysregulation, the hyperfocus, and the rejection sensitivity dysphoria. Now,
yeah.
all of that is very tricky to remember.
mm,
And when I was first learning about ADHD, I don't think I would have remembered those 6 things.
mm,
So I deliver some awareness training for various organizations around the UK in particular. And the way I describe ADHD is focus, function, and feelings. So
mm,
difficulties with focus, function, and feelings.
mm,
So that expression, a lot of people really like that description of the 3 Fs because it
mm,
helps them kind of remember the 3 main areas that people
mm,
with ADHD struggle with. So
mm.
focus and, inattentive is such a poor way to describe
Yeah,
ADHD
it
because
is. Yeah.
we have hyperfocus as well. We're not
Mm,
we're not inattentive all the time, but we can get distracted away from things we're not interested
mm,
in, but we can be very, very focused on the things that we are
yeah.
interested in. So the focus thing could be maybe not enough focus on some things that we're supposed to be interested in.
Mm,
And maybe too much focus or a little bit verging on kind of, obsession maybe with the things that we are interested in.
yeah.
That can cause difficulties as well.
Mm,
And then you've got the function. So a lot of what people associate ADHD with is executive function difficulties. So
yeah.
things around organizing, scheduling,
Mm,
timekeeping, tidiness,
mm,
um, being able to just kind of do things in prioritizing in the right order.
yeah.
So things like deadlines, struggling
Mm,
with, being able to just kind of keep things in some kind of order to be able for them for almost like the opposite of chaos. So
yeah.
quite a lot of people with ADHD feel like they're living in a kind of chaos. So
Mm,
it could be clutter, could be mess,
mm,
it could be internal clutter and mess, or it could be
mm,
external clutter and mess, or
mm,
both.
mm,
So that kind of executive function thing, losing
yeah.
stuff, not knowing where things are,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. And then thirdly, the feelings, which could be emotions. Emotional dysregulation is very, very
Mm,
common
yeah.
amongst people with ADHD, but also physical sensations as well, the physical feelings of the body. Some people are very disassociated from their bodies.
Mm,
Some
mhm,
people are very in their bodies,
mhm,
and some people's emotions have very much of a physical kind of impact
mm,
on them
mm,
as well. So, for
mm,
example, if you're rejection sensitive, which most people do seem to be,
yeah.
who have ADHD, they can be physically painful to feel
Yeah.
rejected or criticized.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 main kind of areas that I would
Mm,
say that people struggle with who have ADHD.
mm. Yeah, and just to pick up on the RSD, yeah, I mean, I guess that is really, really common. But I guess the feelings that, well, from what I can see, the feelings that come up with RSD, these are massive, massive triggers, aren't they? I just could you maybe just say a little bit around the RSD and perhaps why it might be there with people with ADHD?
It's such a good question. I mean, I
Mm.
don't think anyone's ever come up with a kind of medical or neurological
No,
reason for ADHD. I'm not,
no.
it may be related to the emotional dysregulation, and obviously I'm
Mm,
not a neuroscientist, so it's
mm,
not really my field.
mm,
But what I would say is that these massive feelings are very commonly felt amongst people with
mm.
ADHD, and there's a few things that kind of
Yeah.
coexist alongside those. And one of them is trauma.
Mm,
So what we find is that many people who have ADHD and who are neurodivergent are coming through possibly a traumatic childhood because they're trying desperately to fit into whatever it is that
yeah.
society is expecting of them. Possibly parents either commonly being neurodivergent themselves,
Yeah.
not really, maybe some clashes, maybe some misunderstandings, maybe some difficulties in childhood as well. Our parents, of course, they went through their own traumas, so we've got some generational trauma coming through
Yeah.
as well.
Definitely.
And it's very common to find that people with ADHD have complex trauma, which
Mm,
is not the same as PTSD. It's
mm,
much more of a kind of long-term,
mm,
insidious kind of trauma
mm,
that results in an adult feeling often very, very badly about themselves.
mm.
So they'll
Yeah.
very often be very harsh to themselves. They'll be their own worst critic.
Yeah.
They could feel unloved or unwanted or not good enough.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, and then the rejection sensitivity, if that is there in that person, then the criticisms that they then receive,
Mm,
and we know from research that a neurodivergent child will receive 12,000 more criticisms, or possibly 10,000 by the time they're 12 than a neurotypical child.
shocking.
So adding all that together with the possibility that you've got RSD,
mm,
the high number of criticisms,
mm,
all of that added together
mm.
can cause things like complex trauma and can make the person feel
Yeah.
have extremely low self-esteem.
Yeah, yeah, and I have to say that's something that I also see really. I mean, coming through the schooling system, and beyond, that's really not, well, I guess it's maybe slightly better now, perhaps than it used to be in my day, but that's not really set up for neurodivergent. I mean, that in itself is a massive struggle, and I guess ADHD is mask. I guess they mask a lot to try and
If
fit
they
in.
can,
Yeah,
if they can. And
yeah,
one of the things around gender, and I'm not discounting
mm,
any gender identities here, is but what
mm,
we generally find is
mm,
that, and this is why little boys have been more commonly diagnosed with ADHD,
yeah,
because they're seemingly tending not to mask,
mm,
whereas girls with ADHD are seeming to mask more,
yeah,
so they can go for a lot longer without being
mm,
noticed and discovered because they can be quite good at hiding it, masking, fitting in, finding ways to fit in. And it's the same with
definitely.
autism and
Mm,
the same with ADHD as well. So people with
yeah,
both autism and ADHD. And that's a very general thing
yeah,
around gender there. I'm not
yeah,
saying it's like very black and white because
mm,
it isn't.
mm,
But I think that's why we're finding more women and girls are being
yeah.
diagnosed a bit later on
Mm.
because they have been very adept at masking at a younger age.
Yeah, I mean, this is just generally. I mean, obviously, everyone is going to be completely different, but what generally tends to happen with women and girls later, then when they start to think, oh, okay, or when they look for a diagnosis or start to really self-identify, as having ADHD. So they've gone through a schooling system, presumably, and then it comes later.
Well, and this again is a
Yeah, it's a
generalization.
generalization, of course. Yeah,
What we're finding is that a lot of girls and women are going through their school years with kind of through their interest-based nervous system being quite interested
yeah,
in what's happening at school
yeah,
and it being okay for them to some extent. We often hear of girls being high achievers, for example.
yeah,
But what then happens is that there could be hormone related issues going on. There
yeah,
could be big life change issues going on.
hmm,
Going to university is a good example.
mm,
Having kids, maybe getting into a relationship or
yeah,
perimenopause and then
yeah,
menopause. Those can be key life stages
mm,
where a woman might describe it as the wheels fell off. And
yeah,
a lot of people go through major burnout.
mm, hmm,
A lot of women, a lot of men go through major burnout
yeah,
as well. But that's the kind of a bit of a pattern that we're seeing with
mm,
women and girls because they've been okay sort of while they've been younger
yeah, yeah,
and they have kind of succeeded in the things
mm,
that they wanted to do, albeit sometimes by masking heavily,
yeah,
and then they will get to a point where they can't go on any longer
yeah.
and
Yeah,
it all just goes into horrible burnout.
yeah. And I'm also thinking about things like PMDD. I mean, that's something, I guess when you're talking about hormonal changes, I mean, that's something, I mean, obviously it's not only neurodivergent women that get PMDD, but I mean, but a lot of women with ADHD do seem to have PMDD as well. And that is also another massively difficult thing for people to manage. Could I just moving on to the coaching, Esther? What is ADHD coaching? What
Yeah,
what what is it?
that's a great question. That's a great question. And who am I to say what ADHD coaching is,
Yeah.
right? It's I I started coaching and I was using lots of traditional methodologies and models and techniques, but I was
Mm.
using them in a very different way to the way they'd been intended.
Yeah.
And and originally I wanted a course for my son to do to learn to be an ADHD coach, and there wasn't one in the UK that was accredited.
Mm.
So I talked to the Association for Coaching, who I'd been a member of for a good couple of years. I come from an education background. I know how to
Mm.
deliver training. I train other people how to deliver
Yeah.
training.
Yeah.
I thought I could deliver some ADHD coach training, which has been accredited by a professional body
Mm.
because it doesn't exist.
Mm.
Little did I know at the time that what I was actually doing was kind of almost consolidating an approach to coaching that didn't really exist.
Mm.
And that is a bit scary for me because it's only been over 2 years. We've trained 141 people so far.
Wow, that's loads of people.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that ethos now has become a thing in
Mm,
the UK. And we've had people from other countries
mm,
as well attending the course. And what we're saying is it's a little bit, it's not in keeping with traditional coaching methodology or ethos, really, which is the non-directive.
mm,
So traditional coaching, you have your client, you work through with them, you do the explorations, you ask
mm,
them lots of questions, you bring it out of them. It's all in there.
mm,
All you have to do is get it out. It doesn't work that way with neurodivergent clients.
mm.
Our neurodivergent clients, myself included, we need more structure, we need more guidance. We need to have our coaches need to have permission to be able to use a directive, non-directive approach with us
Yeah,
so that they can give us some structure and guidance.
yeah.
I always say, we're not going to work through an hour trying to help our client invent the Pomodoro technique when we already know about the Pomodoro technique, and we
Yeah,
could share it with them
yeah.
with permission at an appropriate moment
Mm,
when they've done lots of exploring about what it is that
mm,
they really need. And traditional coaching providers, traditional coaching trainers, I don't know of any other training that takes that on board
mm,
and gives us the permission to be able to adapt coaching
mm.
tools and techniques to what serves our client. And now coaches are always talking about serving their client, and yet somehow the directive, non-directive model is frowned upon. But actually, that's what makes
Yeah,
coaching accessible for our clients, because it gives them
yeah.
something to work within, a structure, and that advice and guidance and information about
Mm,
ADHD that they really
mm,
want and need, and
mm,
really is what they're coming to coaching for.
mm, mm.
But of course, we do. It's a non-directive, predominantly non-directive, because we're
Yeah.
asking them lots of questions and helping them to realize things and
Mm,
looking at things from different perspectives and so on.
mm,
So it's all in there. It is coaching, it's not
mm.
teaching, and it's not therapy, but we give ourselves permission to be able to share
Yeah.
guidance and information. And
Yeah.
that's what I think ADHD coaching is.
Yeah, and I guess people coming for ADHD coaching, they probably want the strategies. I mean, I guess if if you as a coach, know a lot of the different kind of strategies, got a lot of stuff in your toolbox, it would seem wrong really not to share that.
And that's
Yeah.
what people say.
Mm,
I've not just invented this. I sort
mm,
of invented it a bit, I suppose,
mm,
but I kind of got it out there. But that was the reason I got it out there, was based on what people were telling me that they
mm,
needed. And of course, I
mm,
do a lot of supervision,
mm,
and sometimes I supervise people who are not ADHD coaches, or sometimes I supervise people who are working with neurodivergent clients. And often people will say that they feel guilty if they're putting too much
mm,
structure or guidance into their coaching,
mm,
even though they intuitively know that that's what their client needs.
mm.
So me as a supervisor, I'm saying that's okay, and they're like, "Oh, thank goodness for that," because they know what their client needs.
Yeah, and like you say, there'll be a lot of exploration first. I mean, there'll be a
Mm.
lot. You'll be getting to know the person. You'll be building relationships, finding out what they need. I mean, I guess you're not just going to in session one to start suggesting lots and lots of. You need to get to know the person and what they're experiencing first, and then maybe make some suggestions. So it does differ from kind of mainstream coaching in that respect. Really, has there been a lot of debate about it in the coaching, or directive, non-directive, or
Not yet.
no?
And
Okay,
the reason I've been talking about this publicly for a couple of years now, and so far so good. And I think the reason there hasn't been any very much debate is because the people who are within the neurodivergent community get it, and they
yeah,
say, yeah, this is what we need. And the people outside of the neurodivergent community can't really have too much of an opinion on it
mm,
because they're not neurodivergent,
mm,
and it's not for them to say what's going to work for us
mm,
and for our
mm,
community.
mm,
So unless neurodivergent people started telling me this is wrong,
mm,
I would obviously, have to have that conversation. But so far, nobody has ever said this directive, non-directive model is the wrong
mm,
approach.
mm,
I think we all inherently understand that if we think differently, then we're
mm.
going to need to be able to work differently,
Yeah.
and that we're going to need to be able to um, come up with our ideas and our
Mm,
support and
mm,
resources
mhm,
also differently.
mm. Yeah, I mean dare I say, even in the counselling world, I mean, obviously, in counselling, we are, we're not directive, we don't suggest things, of course, but even in the counselling world, I have to say, someone comes. This is something I see quite a lot. Someone will come with depression, and they'll want some strategy. Yeah, I mean, we can explore and we'll look at why the depression is there and we'll look back and all of that. That is the counselling model. But some people, sometimes I think people that are suffering, they want something they can do, like physical exercise would be a good example of that. There is a little bit, I think, of crossover here. CBT gives a lot of strategies.
Yeah.
So just contrasting the two, there's a little bit of kind of crossover here.
Mm.
Could I just ask, just segueing again into the workplace, what kind of difficulties to ADHDers, depending on the workplace? I mean, let's just say an office workplace for, I mean, there's plenty of workplaces, of course, but just to look at that, what kind of difficulties do ADHDers have in the workplace? What do you tend to see?
Well, lots of difficulties, and we'll go back
Mm.
to the three F's again.
Yeah.
So focus, um, being able to focus on things that aren't interesting, challenging, novel, or urgent.
Mhm.
So that idea that we must do this thing, but this other thing
Mhm.
is far more interesting. Um,
Mhm.
so prioritization, very, very difficult. Being an autonomous worker, that can be
Mhm.
difficult if you're trying
Mhm.
to do some tasks that are not the most interesting tasks in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Um, Office spaces can be very difficult, can be very distracting,
Yeah.
can be very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I mean, lots of people with ADHD are actually, self-employed and entrepreneurs because they
Yeah.
can figure out what they want to focus on.
Yeah. Definitely.
And so, it's a very good option for people.
Mhm.
In terms of, function, people can struggle with turning up to meetings or
Yeah.
scheduling their time or keeping a track of multiple projects
Mhm.
and those kinds of things.
Mhm.
So people can feel that they're falling short, and then we go into the feelings where people can feel shame and they can feel guilt and they can
Mhm.
feel that they're not doing very well. So their self-esteem can become lower and lower.
Yeah.
And what we'll often find is people who are extremely intelligent, very, very good at their jobs. They get
Yeah.
moved up the ladder, they get more and more responsibilities, less and less in the way of what they used to do hands-on,
Mhm.
more and more, line management responsibilities,
Mhm.
those kinds of things. The overwhelm just gets more and more and more, and then some kind of burnout can
Yeah.
happen
Yeah. Yeah.
because the plates that they're trying to spin
Mhm.
whilst being accountable to others can just be so overwhelming and so difficult that
Mhm.
the whole thing can come crashing down. And a lot of people go to coaching after having experienced burnout in the
Yeah.
work.
Do people tend to, I mean, I guess everyone's experiences of burnout is going to be different, but do people tend to freeze? Do ADHDers, I mean, when they get burnt out, I mean, what does that look like? I
I
mean,
have not burnt out myself.
yeah,
I
okay.
wouldn't I wouldn't be speaking from my own experience,
Mm,
but from my understanding from clients is, you know, as a person with ADHD, we're far more likely to have mental health issues. So we're far more likely to have anxiety, depression, insomnia, eating
mhm,
issues, and all sorts of other things. So
yeah,
I think that kind of combination of factors can come together, and it might be called stress, or it
yeah,
might be called anxiety or depression,
yeah,
but it's likely to be, I'm not speaking as a medical person,
mhm,
but underneath that, I think there can be burnout. People can be
yeah,
masking hard.
yeah,
And masking takes so much energy.
yeah,
You mask, mask, mask all day. You come home, you crash, you get up, you do it all again. And if you're masking hard all week, then your weekend can
mhm,
be the time when you completely crash.
yeah,
And then if you're masking for months on end or even years,
yeah,
the effort that goes into that can just cause this kind of you when we say burnout, you're literally like a husk of yourself.
yeah,
And it may be insomnia, it may be stress, it may be anxiety,
mm,
depression, or some other
mhm,
outward kind of manifestation of that, but it's that hollowed out
mm,
person inside who's like
mm.
completely run out of energy. Feels like the way it's described to me by various people who get coached.
Yeah, and this is often when people maybe will look to coaching. They'll be looking for some help. and they'll come. And I guess maybe, I mean, if someone's been masking probably their whole life, I guess it's become so normalized often that perhaps they don't even consciously understand they're doing it, or the expenditure of energy they're using every moment of every day in order to, I mean, the masking could even be going on at home, couldn't it? I mean, this is not
Absolutely.
just in the workplace, is it? Socially, it could be going on in multiple domains, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Various different dimensions of a
yeah,
person's life. And my colleague Anita Patel talks about intersectionality a lot.
yeah,
And all the different intersections of a person's life, they could be
yeah,
masking in any of those or all of them.
yeah, yeah,
And it is exhausting.
yeah. I mean, can I ask about the strengths of ADHD? I mean, looking at ADHD through a strengths-based lens, what do you see the strengths of ADHD?
Very often, this is
Mm,
such a good question because
mm,
people do talk about creativity and energy and all of those things,
mm.
which are definitely strengths. But what I find in my work is that every individual person has their own individual strengths because
Yeah,
each
definitely.
one of them is not just ADHD. Each one of them is a combination of things, which could be other neurotypes like
Yeah,
ADHD,
yeah,
Barrett, something like that,
yeah,
dyslexia, dyscalculia,
yeah.
could be some mental health struggles on top or
Mm,
having been overcome or managed
mm,
and worked with. There
mm,
could be physical difficulties as well, Ehlers-Danlos
mm.
syndrome, gastrointestinal
Yeah,
issues as well. So a person, each individual person and their backgrounds and their gender identity and all of those
yeah,
things come
yeah,
into play.
yeah, yeah,
But it's almost like somebody's strengths are as unique as every other
for sure. Yeah,
element of them in a way.
yeah.
So when I work with a client, yeah, it's definitely strengths based, and
Mm, mm,
we're definitely helping people to develop what they're already good
mm,
at and passionate about,
mm,
and just gives them their energy and their
mm,
life. We
mm.
don't want to be focusing on the deficit model and saying, well, you have all these weaknesses, you have to somehow
No.
become a totally different person.
Mm, mm,
So I think that understanding, what helps, what are their values, what are their strengths,
mm,
what do they love, what do they enjoy,
mm,
what gives them joy,
mm,
but also how to show compassion to ourselves and developing that strength of showing compassion to ourselves and showing kindness to ourselves.
mm,
That's such a huge one. And I think that's
mm.
part of everything I do, really.
Mm. Yeah, and I guess the foundation of that is likely to bring the strengths out. I mean, if somebody has gone through their life with, implicit or explicit negativity around difficulties, things they find difficult, I guess coming into coaching and having a strengths-based coach point out, the strengths that they have as an individual. I mean, that in itself must be life-changing for some individuals, I'd imagine, plus the self-compassion piece.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
there's this little survey that you can do and you ask your client to kind of go through it and it
Mm.
comes out with your top strengths, and then sometimes they dive to the bottom and have a look to see what their weaknesses are, and you're like, these are about your strengths, these are your top strengths, these are your lesser strengths, but they're all strengths.
Mm.
And so understanding that you even have strengths and
Yeah.
understanding what those look like and what they are and
Mm,
how they manifest is so important because
mm.
a lot of people are beating themselves up constantly.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
all see this amazing, beautiful person,
yeah,
talented, skilled, experienced, doing these
yeah,
amazing things,
yeah,
and inside they're just not good enough, not good enough,
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
heartbreaking actually.
Yeah, and when you say about, high intelligence, I mean, I guess that's what I see a lot, really. I see somebody, yeah, with ADHD, super intelligent, but they've gone through, a schooling system that really wasn't set up for them, and they come out feeling, "Oh, stupid, not intelligent, not able." But it really contrasts with the person you see you see someone amazing sitting in front of you, but of course their self-image is not that. And I guess that's part of the work, just to get them to kind of really get in touch with, who they are, what they bring, all the strengths that they have. Yeah, is it difficult for some people to connect with the self-compassion? Because if they spend the whole life beating themselves up, it's a bit of a
Yes.
departure, isn't it?
Very, very
That. Yeah.
difficult, very difficult. And I
Yeah.
always say my coaching, another difference between my coaching and traditional coaching is that I'm very focused on both the practical strategies, because a lot
Hmm.
of people come to coaching with executive function,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
goals and purpose, but I also help them to understand what they're saying to themselves and how we might reframe what they're saying them to
Mm-hmm.
themselves, because it's
Yeah.
no good practicing practical strategies
Mm-hmm.
and going out there and thinking, right, I'm going to reorganize my home, if you're at the same time going to be constantly beating yourself up, and your inner
Yeah.
critic is constantly having a go
Mm-hmm.
at you and being very poisonous, as some people
Yeah.
describe it.
Yeah.
So my dual process is both practical strategies, but also what are you saying to yourself, and how can we reframe that? How can we develop your inner coach?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this started off quite slowly when I first started coaching, this whole idea of inner critic and inner coach,
Mm-hmm.
but it's become really key
Mm-hmm.
to the work that I do with my clients.
Mm-hmm.
Getting out your inner critic and having a look at it and understanding it, getting
Yeah.
out your inner coach and developing it and
Mm-hmm.
growing it.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a bit metaphorical, but it seems to just work so well for people because there's
Mm-hmm.
something to kind of hang on to and something to have a proper look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have to say, one of many things I really loved about the training was the idea of an inner coach. I'd never heard that. I mean, I use that all the time now. It's absolutely brilliant. It just provides a bit of balance, doesn't it? Because you've got this negative critic telling you off, being negative, but then what's the inner coach saying? The opposite one would hope. It kind of gives a bit of balance. And I guess one would hope after a while, this negative part starts to kind of recede into the background a little bit more. The coach starts to take center ground. And of course, what the coach is saying is reality tested. I mean, the coach is not making it up. I mean, it's just focusing on the strengths for the person. We're almost out, we're running out of time a little bit. Can I ask you about your training? Um, how do people access it? What is it? What is the training that you offer?
It's a 12-week 60-hour course, 36 hours of which are live online.
Hmm.
I'm very much a fan of, I come from an education background, I would say this. It's very much about the live interactions that we have with
Hmm.
each other. It's about the group, it's about how the
Yeah,
group gets together. We will practice with each other. We do a lot of coaching with each other on the course. There's a lot of resources and stuff to also back the course up. But
yeah,
the idea is that you come on my course, it's a practical course. You do coaching, you try out models, and you do some practice coaching with some practice coaching clients,
yeah,
6 hours each with them. And then you come out, you have some supervision. The
mm,
course is accredited by coaching bodies, so
yeah,
it's based on code of ethics and competency frameworks,
yeah,
the Association for Coaching and the Universal Coaching Alliance.
hmm,
You then become a member of both of those bodies
yeah,
for free for a year
yeah,
afterwards. So you get taken through the process of the actual coaching itself.
mm,
So it's not an academic course. You don't write lots of essays.
mm,
If you want to then go on become accredited afterwards, you can then go on and do that.
yeah,
But this gives you your practical
mm,
skills and experience
yeah.
to be able to go out and actually coach people.
Yeah, and just again to say to our listeners, yeah, I mean, I did the training recently, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, it really has changed the way that I practice, and the groups. I mean, probably every group you teach is different, but I can only talk about the group I was in. But the group was wonderful. Groups can be great or not great when you do like counseling training or coaching, but the group I had was brilliant. You all get to know each other really, really quickly because it's also interactive, and then that's the foundation for the learning. I don't know. I just absolutely loved it. I mean, we'll put all your links up with our social media sites on the show notes, but if people want to get hold of you, Esther, what's the best way that they can do it?
Email is good. I know it's a bit
Yeah.
old-fashioned, but there's a contact link on my website.
Mm,
Just pop me an email. I'm
mhm,
one of those people who's got everything in their email box.
mm.
Like it's my to-do list is my inbox.
Mm,
So if somebody sends me an email, I would
mm,
definitely get back to them.
mm, mhm,
And our website as well, barrettcoachingandtraining.com.
mhm,
That's Barrett with an E. And just Google us. We seem to be coming up more and more,
mm,
probably because there is such not that many choices for people who want to become ADHD coaches particularly in the UK, and we're getting people
mm,
from all over as well. So,
mm.
if somebody's looking for an accredited course that's
Yeah,
accredited by a professional coaching body,
yeah.
then there are a
Mm.
couple of choices.
And can I ask, how do you see the future of ADHD coaching in the UK? It's big in the States, apparently, isn't it? But not
We're
growing
gonna
here.
we're gonna make it big. We're gonna
Yeah,
make it big because we know that this is life-changing. A combination of
yeah,
therapy and counseling, psychotherapy and counseling, coaching, medications for those who it's appropriate for,
Yeah.
peer supports, networks, support groups, all of those things the community is developing
Mm.
for and by itself
Yeah.
the whole time. And the
Yeah.
coaching has given us a vehicle to bring people together in a way that we didn't have before.
Mm.
ADHD UK have done an amazing job of bringing
Mm.
people together. They have these support groups and it's fab.
Mm.
They're doing a
Mm.
great job and we work with them as
Mm.
well. So I think that what we're gonna see in the future are more niches for coaches. So
Yeah.
specializing therapeutic coaches,
Yeah.
coaches who work with parents, kids,
Yeah. Yeah.
menopause,
Yeah.
gender identity, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And also just this growing community of people who are supporting each
Mm.
other and supporting the people who are in the NHS, in the criminal justice system,
Mm. Yeah.
who are in local government, who are in
Mm.
education. We as a community can support those people providing those services, I
Mm.
think, and that's only going to
Mm.
grow.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I mean, I look back at kind of my life and when I was younger, the whole idea around neurodivergence, yeah, it was there, but it wasn't so much in the public domain. But I guess it is becoming more and more. It's entering into public domain, isn't it? It's on social media. There's a lot more kind of understanding about it, and that can only be good because, neurodivergent people bring so much to society. I mean, goodness me, the whole spread of neurodivergence. I mean, so yeah. I mean, I
We are
could talk a lot
amazing.
more about that, but I but I probably
We're
won't. But
we're
it's true,
amazing.
isn't
Yeah, because
it?
we
Yeah,
think about things in a different way.
yeah,
I mean, how many, now that I know so much more about autism and ADHD and other
mm,
neurotypes,
mm,
looking back in history, seeing all these amazing people who did all these amazing things,
definitely.
how often
Yeah,
do you think to yourself, God, they really seem quite autistic to me, or they seem like a
yeah,
real full of energy ADHD, you know?
yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure that we've contributed so much to society.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Creativity. And so interesting when you're talking about entrepreneurs. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people with ADHD do become entrepreneurs, set up their own businesses,
Yeah.
very successful businesses, often. Yeah,
And lots of artists and actors and
yeah,
people are now coming out and
mm,
sharing that they've discovered that they're
yeah,
neurodivergent. So,
yeah,
that creativity and the energy. And if we can
mm,
channel our energy into a
mm,
direction that is not, because so many people end up in prison or worse.
yeah, true. Yeah,
And, if we can help people to channel their energies and channel
mm,
their strengths, as you say,
mm,
then I'm sure we could help the NHS, the criminal justice
mm.
system, and the whole of society.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So this is just going to grow and grow and grow and
I
grow,
think so.
basically. Yeah, I mean, to the benefit of society and to the benefit of the neurodivergent people. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to say, Esther?
If anyone wants to chat with me ever,
Mm,
I'm always available. Well, I say I'm always available. I will always make time to chat with people because I don't want to be that person who turns into some kind of
mm,
ivory tower guru
yeah,
who's unapproachable and we need to talk to each other. That's so important for
yeah,
all of us. We
yeah,
can't just set ourselves up as gurus and
mm,
never be in touch with people on who are living their lives just like me and you are.
no,
I think it's really,
yeah,
really important to talk to each other and to share our stories and to
yeah,
come together. And I really hope, we had our conference a few weeks ago. It was
yeah.
amazing.
It
I
was
want, I,
amazing.
I
Yeah.
want to bring people together like that.
Mm,
When you are in a room with 60 people with
mm,
ADHD, and I remember
mm,
seeing some podcasters, there was about 400 people in the room with ADHD watching this podcaster show. Just that vibe,
mm, mm,
knowing that you're not alone is so important for all of us,
yeah.
and just being able to reach out and just chat and have a cup of coffee and chat. It's
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah. I mean, the community, the
Absolutely.
building of community, so important. Yeah, and obviously I went to the conference, and yeah, I absolutely loved it. Esther. It was brilliant. Looking forward to the next one.
You too.
Okay, that's probably a good place to finish, Esther. I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been brilliant, and it's been lovely to see you again.
It's a pleasure. Lovely to see you too.
And once again, I'd like to thank Esther so much for coming on the show. ADHD and neurodivergence much, much more in the public domain now, which is tremendously important because there are so many neurodivergent people in the UK and indeed in the world. ADHD, autism, Tourette, all sorts of neurodivergence really, really kind of coming into the public domain. I forget what the figures were. I've read some research saying that the figures of how many people in the UK were neurodivergent. I might be wrong about this, but something like 5%. It might have been more than that. My feeling is probably that number is much, much higher. So it's really, really good that neurodivergence is becoming better known, more understood, and there's a lot more information out there. As I said in the interview, I did Esther's training recently, and I found it to be absolutely fantastic. It was brilliant. It's really changed the way I work as a practitioner. So if you are interested in ADHD coaching or receiving coaching, supervision, or getting in touch with Esther for any of the multiple things that she does, then please do check out her links on her show notes and also on her social media sites. As always, the shows will be going out on audio and they'll also be going out on our YouTube channel, Mark Fielding, #psychotherapy unfold. The YouTube channel's still not doing brilliantly. Joe and I are going to work now on the marketing. We're on halfway through series 6 now. We think we have a really good product, but I think the marketing perhaps is at fault. So we're going to employ someone to help us a little bit with the marketing going forwards. Regular listeners will know we have had a bit of a break from the shows, but we are going to get back into bringing out regular shows. Generally, we kind of have about 22-ish interviews in each season, so we've got plenty of scope for some more fascinating interviews on series 6. I'm talking to a colleague around coming on the show talking about addiction and recovery from addiction soon. Something we covered, I think, in series 4, but such an important area that should be a really, really interesting show if I can get that one sorted. If you are enjoying the show, please do subscribe. Our subscriptions are going up. I want to thank our subscribers, people who have subscribed. Thank you so much. Really helps us out. If you are somebody that listens to the podcasts and doesn't subscribe or like, I must admit I'm guilty of doing that myself. I listen to multiple podcasts and I don't always like or subscribe, but please do. It helps us out in so many different ways. So as I always say at the end of the show, thank you so much for our listeners. We wouldn't have a show without you. And do look after yourselves, look after each other, and look after the planet. And I'll see you really soon on the next episode. Thank you for listening.